Old age, like a quiet river flowing toward the sea, carries with it both sweet memories and unspoken sorrows. For Eleanor, now 75 years old, these later years of her life should have been a time of comfort and happiness surrounded by her children and grandchildren. Yet, reality turned out to be far from the dream she once envisioned. Eleanor was once a devoted and exemplary mother. In her younger days, she and her husband, James, worked tirelessly to build a warm and loving home. They had 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. Together, the couple believed their hard work and sacrifices would be rewarded in their old age. They poured their hearts into ensuring their children received the best education and grew up in a nurturing environment. In those days, Eleanor often told herself, "When I grow old, my children will surround me, and I'll live a peaceful life." But life, as it often does, did not follow the script she had written in her mind. Everything changed when James passed away over a decade ago after a prolonged illness. From then on, Eleanor found herself living alone in a small house in the suburbs, facing a stark new reality. Her children, now grown and with families of their own, were scattered across different cities. Peter, her eldest son, settled in a bustling metropolis, working long hours in the financial sector. Michael, her second son, ran a small store, constantly occupied with the demands of his business. Sarah and Lily, her 2 daughters, each had their own families and responsibilities that tied them down. Eleanor understood that her children had legitimate reasons for not visiting often. She reminded herself repeatedly that their busy lives were not their fault. Yet, the creeping loneliness still found its way into her heart. During the day, she busied herself with little chores, tending to her garden, preparing meals, and cleaning her house. But as night fell, the emptiness of her quiet home became nearly unbearable. Every evening, Eleanor would sit on her front porch watching the sun dip below the trees in her garden. She listened to the soft rustle of the wind and marveled at the birds returning to their nests. Often, she wondered, did I do something wrong to end up living alone in my final years? These questions lingered, weighing down her heart with a heaviness that words could not describe. Sometimes her mind would wander back to holidays when the house was full of laughter and joy. The sound of her children playing, the clinking of dishes during a shared meal, and the simple warmth of family togetherness seemed so distant now. Those cherished memories only highlighted the silence that now filled her home. Though she understood that everyone carried their own burdens, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling of sadness and disappointment. Perhaps, she thought, my love and sacrifices weren't enough for them to notice. It was a painful realization, but one she knew she had to confront. Eleanor resolved to face her new reality with strength, knowing life would not wait for her to catch up. And above all, she told herself, expectations could only bring more heartache. Eleanor often recalled the beautiful days of the past, when her entire family gathered together in their small but lively home. Those were the happiest moments of her life. Her eldest son, Peter, was her greatest pride. Peter was a diligent, bright student who always received praise from his teachers. When he earned a prestigious scholarship to study in the city, the whole family celebrated with a small party. Peter represented all of Eleanor's hopes and dreams, a testament to her sacrifices and tireless efforts as a mother. Her second son, Michael, took a different path. He wasn't as academically inclined as Peter, but he was resourceful and hardworking. Michael opened a small shop in a nearby town and gradually became a successful businessman. Eleanor's 2 daughters, Sarah and Lily, were gentle and kind. Each of them got married and moved away, Sarah to a bustling city with her husband, and Lily to a rural area where she became part of a traditional family. Though separated by distance, these memories remained a great comfort to Eleanor. Deep down, she always hoped that her children would return home for holidays and family gatherings. She envisioned the house filled with laughter, children running around, and the warm aroma of her cooking in the air. But as the years went by, those reunions became less frequent. Eleanor began to realize that the children she once placed so much hope in were drifting further away, both physically and emotionally. At first, family reunions were still somewhat regular. Yet over time, the excuses began to pile up. Instead of coming home, Her children would call to send their holiday greetings from afar, citing work or family responsibilities as reasons they couldn't visit. The explanations seemed reasonable, but to Eleanor, they felt more like justifications. One day, Eleanor fell ill. Her heart condition flared up, and she found herself unable to manage on her own. Her doctor advised immediate hospitalization and insisted she needed a family member present to handle the necessary paperwork for surgery. Reluctantly, Eleanor called her children for help. Peter was the first she called, as he was the one she had always counted on the most. But on the other end of the line, Peter replied in a rushed tone, "I'm really busy, Mom. I can't take time off work. Maybe try calling one of the others?" Disheartened, Eleanor called Michael next. His response was equally disappointing. "Mom, it's the end of the year, and I have so many things to take care of at the shop. I just can't leave right now." When Eleanor reached out to Sarah, she was met with another polite excuse. "I need to stay home and take care of the kids, Mom. They're still too young to leave with anyone else." As for Lily, her youngest daughter, she didn't even answer the phone. At that moment, Eleanor felt her heart break. Not because her children wouldn't come to her, but because she realized she was no longer a priority in their lives. The children she had loved and sacrificed so much for had other concerns and responsibilities now. During her hospital stay, Eleanor had no choice but to manage everything on her own. She handled the admission process, hired a caretaker, and faced her surgery alone. In the cold, sterile hospital room, she couldn't help but notice how other patients were surrounded by their families. Relatives brought meals, stayed by their bedside, and provided comfort and support. The sight of their care felt like a sharp knife cutting into Eleanor's loneliness. Eleanor didn't blame her children, but she couldn't stop herself from feeling hurt and disappointed. Loneliness wasn't just a physical pain, it became a deep emotional wound that seemed impossible to heal. After her surgery, Eleanor returned to her familiar home. But everything felt different now. With no hope left for her children's support, she made a decision to change her life. Eleanor started planning for her old age independently. She sold part of her property to boost her savings, hired help when needed, and learned to find joy in simple, everyday things. She spent her days tending to her small backyard garden, growing fresh vegetables, and keeping a few chickens for company. In the evenings, she would sit on her porch, quietly watching the sunset and listening to the rustling wind through the trees. Her transformation didn't stop there. Eleanor decided to confront the reality of her situation by sharing her plans with her children. One day, she called each of them to announce her decision to sell the house and move into a retirement home. Surprisingly, the news sparked a newfound interest in her well-being. Peter began calling more often to check on her health, and Michael visited occasionally with small gifts. Even Sarah and Lily stopped by more frequently, but their conversations often revolved around the division of assets. Eleanor quickly realized that their renewed concern wasn't rooted in genuine care for her, but rather in the value of her house and savings. Instead of feeling bitter, Eleanor found a sense of relief. She no longer felt hurt by her children's indifference because she had let go of her expectations. She learned to live for herself and found happiness in her newfound independence. Eleanor continued to live in her small home, carving out joy in her daily routines. When necessary, she hired help or relied on the kindness of her neighbors. She cultivated a life of self-reliance, tending to her garden, caring for her chickens, and savoring the little moments of peace. Each evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, Eleanor sat on her porch, basking in the quiet serenity of her surroundings. Gone were the dreams of family reunions and the heartache of unmet expectations. She had discovered a new kind of happiness, one born from self-sufficiency and the beauty of simplicity. Eleanor's story is not one of sadness, but of strength and resilience. It reminds us that life is not always as we envision it, and sometimes letting go of expectations is the key to finding true peace. For Eleanor, her twilight years became a journey of rediscovery, proving that independence and self-love are the foundations of a fulfilling life. Eleanor's story is not merely a sad tale, but a profound lesson about the value of independence in old age. In life, we often dream of a golden age spent surrounded by our children and grandchildren. However, reality doesn't always align with these expectations. Relying on children, regardless of the reasons, doesn't always guarantee happiness. On the contrary, self-sufficiency and the ability to care for oneself are the true keys to a peaceful and fulfilling life. Dear friends, old age is not an endpoint, but a new chapter, a chance to look back and redefine the meaning of life. Instead of waiting for the care and attention of our children or family, let us learn to love ourselves. Joy and tranquility can be found in the simplest things: a quiet evening watching the sunset, a thriving garden you nurture with your own hands, or the gentle moments of solitude where life slows down and peace takes hold. Just as young birds leave the nest when their wings grow strong, our children too embark on journeys to build their own homes and lives. The old nest may no longer be bustling, but it remains the keeper of cherished memories. What matters is how we transform that space into a place filled with love and comfort, even if we are alone. If you ever feel lonely or disappointed by your children, remember, you are not alone in feeling this way. Many others are walking similar paths, but the key is not to let negative emotions take over your life. Stand strong, plan for your future, and turn your remaining days into bright, fulfilling moments. Learn to live for yourself rather than waiting for others to provide your happiness. Old age doesn't have to be a time of waiting and longing. It can be a period of discovery, of learning new things, rediscovering joys in life, or even pursuing hobbies and dreams you once set aside. Don't hesitate to ask for help when needed, but also recognize the strength that comes from being self-reliant. True freedom lies in letting go of excessive expectations. We hope Eleanor's story inspires you to live a free and independent life, unburdened by sadness or disappointment. Remember, every individual deserves a life of happiness and meaning, no matter their age. If you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to Life Stories 365 to hear more inspirational tales and valuable lessons about life. Don't forget to leave a comment sharing your thoughts or even your own stories. Your engagement is the greatest motivation for us to continue spreading positive messages to the community. Thank you for taking the time to follow this story, and we hope you'll continue to accompany Life Stories 365. Always cherish yourself. Live fully in every moment and enjoy a life filled with peace and happiness. Wishing you a wonderful day.